Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Next Level Podcast with Dr. Leslie. I am your host. This is another In Office with Dr. Leslie episode. I'm doing these now because I have so many requests for information, very detailed and specific information on some of the strategies that I put out there. And this carnivore diet has just gone viral. Everyone is like, oh my God, Leslie, I want to know, tell me more. I mean, the videos have just been going viral and people want to know because this is, I don't want to even call it trending. Although it is, but there's actually science behind it. It's not just one of those trends that come and go and it's like, oh, that whatever that was and now it's not. This is actually something that is research-based, and there's more and more information that's coming out on this carnivore diet. And when I say diet, I don't mean a short term necessarily to lose weight or do anything, but sort of a meal approach. So today in this In Office with Dr. Leslie, I will be talking about how to start the carnivore diet. Really everything of the basic rules of the diet, the items that you need to have to start, how to meet your macros, and that's a really important piece, and the adaptation phase, how to overcome some of those common side effects that you have, especially in those first 30 days, and some general questions that people often have for me, and these are coming from the fans and listeners like, you know, if I start this, what do I need to do? So all of that is going to be in today's episode. So let's get started with that. Actually, before I do want to share also, I have some upcoming episodes that I will be doing on the misconceptions about cholesterol and animal fats. There's a lot of literature that is breaking apart this whole understanding, and really the foundation of cholesterol and heart disease in humans is very, very not what has been told that is really going on. So that's a really important one. One of my listeners wanted me to talk about that. So I'll talk about that in the next episode, as well as insulin and its role in the body, fiber, the misconceptions about fiber, going really into the research and illuminate that. Okay. And I know you guys really love the research. You really want me to sort of bring forward the studies so that you can better understand what's going on and know that it's actually rooted in literature, because that's what's important to me too. All right, so let's get into it. All right, rule number 1. Rules can be broken, but we really want to follow these as best we can. Okay, so on the carnivore diet, you want to be eating only meat, like as much as possible. This is consisting of a high fat and a high protein diet. And what that means, like when people think about carnivore, they think meat is where the majority of my calories are coming from. Like when I did my muscle competitions, I was eating an enormous amount of protein, really about 60% sometimes of my calories from protein. My fat was very, very low. It was like maybe 30%. And then my carbohydrates were somewhere in between, you know, the difference. This is, you want 80% of your calories from fat. So what that translates to is 1 gram of fat is about 8 to 9 calories. 1 gram of protein is about 4 calories. So you can see when you are thinking about your macros, which is one of the things I wanted to talk about, meeting your macros is you need to basically, gram for gram, you're getting almost twice as much fat. So that's an easy way to think about it, right? If you're getting the same amount of volume of fat really to protein, give or take, you're going to be getting that many more calories, like almost double, 1.5 to 2 times. So it's not like you're having to eat an enormous quantity of fat. So just make sure we all know that. And of course, it's no carbohydrates or really low carb. Some of the carnivore foods might have some small amounts of carbohydrates, like eggs, which you're allowed to have, but we really want to keep it as clean as possible. So to give you a little bit more specifics of what kind of meat, because a lot of people, they're just like, okay, I know meat, but what does that actually mean? Tell me, what do I eat? Just tell me what I eat. And there are little shopping lists that you can put together. So I'm going to tell you what to eat. All right, fatty meat. So this includes ribeye, which is like really the fattiest. New York strip is good. I love beef ribs. Love them. There's just so intertwined in the meat. There's fat and then the cartilage. The cartilage is really, really good. So I like beef over pork. Pork, I find the porkiness just really gets old after a while. And I just can't do it, Captain. I just can't do it. So I can't do it for very long. So I stick with the beef ribs. An 80-20 ground beef or like bison is really good. You still want to add butter to all of these meats just because you need to have the extra fat calories. Lamb chops are good. Pork belly, I haven't really done it, so can't say that I like it or not, but you can do that for sure. Fatty fish, so like mackerel, anchovies, I can't do those. King salmon, Arctic char, stuff like that. You want really the fattier omegas and whatnot. Other seafood, oysters and mussels, all that stuff. I mean, if you're allergic, by all means, don't eat them. I don't like them. Shrimp, but you need to make sure you're drenching it all in fat. So butter. You can also use ghee and beef tallow. You can buy like a huge jar of beef tallow, which is just beef fat that's been like melted down and like whipped or whatever into like, it just looks like a jar of coconut oil. That's hard. And you can spoon that on whatever. You can cook with it, definitely want to drench, though, your seafood in more fat. The next one, of course, is your ghee tallow, which I just said. So your extra animal fats that you can just bathe all of your other stuff in. Carnivore snacks. Oh, dear carnivore snacks, how much I love thee. I like to eat the keto beef jerky, and those sausage links are actually my favorite. There's a brand that I will not name, but they're keto little sausages, like the little pepperoni sticks that you used to eat as a kid, like the cheese and the pepperoni. Oh my God, that is so carnivore. Like you see them in the airport and all over the place. Those are like the best snack if you end up being a snacker. We're going to talk about intermittent fasting and the importance of that and having, people eat 1 or 2 meals a day. But I'm a snacker. I just am. My tiny little tummy just can only put so much food in, and I need to have that little satiating in between stuff. So I like my snacks, and you can too. It's perfectly fine. Eggs, like I said, are really great. They have the fat, they have the protein, they also have a little bit of carbs, but not enough significance to really throw you out of ketosis or anything like that. Organ meats. All right. Did anyone say liver or tongue? Spleen. Yeah, there's you can get really dirty into this organ meats, but they are so nutrient rich, right? You can, if you go through and you eat a very comprehensive, complete meat diet with all this different variety, you're going to be pretty much you will be covering every one of your nutrient bases. Absolutely. So please do not forget about the organ meats. No, liver, right? I remember eating liver growing up. Actually, my parents would pan fry it, and I hated it the first time, and then somehow I got addicted to it. It's like very musty tasting. It's very weird, but it's all the iron and the richness in it. So please do allow yourself to expand your horizons with your meat. Bone marrow is really good too. Bone broth is a really important piece as well for electrolytes and other things we'll talk about later. Brains. Will you eat the brains? Oh my God, you can eat brains if you want to. Yeah, get in there. If you want to, you don't have to though. It's an option for you. Full fat dairy is okay also. So we're talking like half and half. You can put that in your coffee if you want to. Also, butter can go into your coffee. That's another way to get the extra calories. We'll talk about coffee in the gray area of whether to eat it or not, or drink it rather or not. You can do keto-friendly yogurt. Again, I'm not a dairy person. I can't digest it. Even though I have a nice clean microbiome, I just don't have the genetics to break that shit down. So I don't eat it. You might have to avoid it as well. There's other side effects that it can create too. So just be mindful of what your body can tolerate. If you have a sensitivity with dairy, but it's not like a huge one, once you clean up your microbiome with this carnivore approach, you might absolutely be able to eat dairy after. I know some people who do it. If it's more of like a lactose thing or a gentle sensitivity, they can sometimes incorporate it every now and then, just a little bit, and their body can handle it much, much better, but not necessarily on a regular basis. So that's an individual thing. There are different options like carnivore cheese. I don't even really go down the dairy route. So personally, I don't know a whole ton about it, but you can eat every cheese known to man so long as there's no carbohydrates in it. I did create an affinity for Asiago. Oh my God. Hello, Asiago. I mean, I think I found my love, even though I cannot eat you in big quantities. Cheese is like a big thing. So be my guest, enjoy all of that as much as you want. So that's the main rundown in terms of what foods you can eat. Of course, bacon is on that list too, if I didn't specify it. I love me my bacon. So I literally go to bed and I dream about, like, envision, get prepared, delightfully get into a state of bliss, thinking of my bacon in the morning. Like, I go to bed thinking about food. I always have done this pretty much, because I'm exercising all the time, it feels like, or I'm in a calorie deficit all the time. I don't know what it is, but I fantasize about bacon now and drinking the bacon fat, and it drips down my neck, or sometimes down my mouth and down my neck. I'm sure it's super sexy. Maybe to a carnivore guy, that might be some carnivore pee, but I don't know if I can say that word, the PORN word. Anyways, yeah, it's totally that, I think, for some people, but it is pretty disgusting. Even me eating ribs, like, it's just, I just get in there and I rip it with my teeth and I just get all like animal fat sexy. So that I probably will never post. I probably will never post anything like that. My producer just said she's going to secretly videotape me and post it. All right, whatever. I don't mind. I'm a lion. Look, I've got my lion props here. This is lion diet, you know? I just need someone to, like, lick it off me after. I need my Lion King to lick off my grease like the lions do. They lick each other after they've devoured a carcass. So yeah, that's hot. That should be on my non-negotiable list for meeting a man, is he must lick the fat off my face when I'm done eating. Okay, perfect. It's in there. Done, in my pockets. So what happens when you don't eat enough fat is you get mad carb cravings. We're going to talk again a little bit more about that, but I'm stressing the importance of do not buy lean meat ever again. Do not buy lean meat. So the hierarchy is like the chickens and the lean meats and the turkeys. They are all at the bottom of this food pyramid. All right. So you don't get enough of the nutrients or the fat from those animals. That's why you got to go for those really high fat, meaty animals. So like, you know, beef, bison, elk, that sort of thing, you really want to go for that. And their organs are just heartier as well too, just because of the nature of how their bodies process things. So that is it for rule number 1. Numero dos, no plants. Obviously, since this is carnivore, we don't want you to have any plants. And really the reason is plants are actually toxic. There is a lot of information. I will post some resources. I'm always trying to post the research that plants really are not, it's part of their evolutionary process to be protective, to survive. Like, plants don't want to be eaten, even though they're not have like a intellect and a consciousness like we do, or animals that move around. They have adapted over time to survive also. And they create these toxins. They have toxins in them, so they won't be eaten. And our bodies respond to them too. So there's oxalates, which I've talked about, the phytotoxins, lectins, tannins. There's a bunch of different ones. And, you know, our bodies actually absorb them and they keep them. And at night, when we're supposed to be resting and sleeping, our body is trying to chelate, it's trying to detox them, instead of spending that beautiful, purified state regenerating our body and healing so we can look 28 forever. So, or whatever number you want to be. And, basically the concept is to regenerate. Our body has the potential to regenerate. We also know this. So plant-based diets create an enormous amount of toxins. And we're going to talk about a little bit about the adaptation phase and what happens. And should you start this, you will know 100% for yourself that this is for real. Because especially when I went through mine, I've talked about this in all my carnivore episodes so far, what happened to me just in those first 6 days, I was mind blown first at the insane amount of regenerative capacity my body had in such a short period of time, but two, how much toxin I had in my body that my body was fighting. It is absolutely insane. To pass a kidney stone day 6, I didn't know that. It was dissolving and flowing out of me, and it was excruciating pain. Day 6 of this. Our bodies are incredible machines for regeneration. Why? If we can reverse age and or heal ourselves and keep ourselves in a beautiful homeostatic spot where we can look and feel vital for a very, very long time, longer than we understand ourselves to, why would we be putting things in our mouth that counteract that, right? So plant-based, I'm so sorry to say, and there's a lot of literature out there about this too. I just put together a PowerPoint for a conference I'm speaking at about gut-brain axis, mental wellness, and the carnivore and the misconceptions of these diets. There's so much literature I found on plant-based diets actually being speculative, not causative in terms of all of these things, and actually that cholesterol and ketosis and carnivore is not as bad as it was also being sold to us as well. There's a lot of selective science that's out there that we're being sold and marketed about, and a lot of information that is very important and valid that is not being shared as well. So, all right, moving on. Rule number 3, you must add salt to all of your meat, pretty much all of your food, all of it. And let me tell you very specifically why and what will happen should you not do this. So when your body is running on carbohydrates, you have insulin release, and insulin does play a role in salt resorption, right? Which regulates your fluids and regulates what's an electrolyte sodium is, and your water and blood pressure and all this stuff. So if you are not consuming carbohydrates, you're not going to have the plethora of insulin, like the regular amounts of insulin, that's the spikes and the peaks and the troughs. You're not going to have that salt coming into your body, the resorption and the fluid to come with it. You're just not going to have anything resorbed, so there's no fluid that's really going to be resorbed, which means your blood pressure is going to bottom out and you're going to get ridiculously dizzy and faint and all of those horrible feelings that you feel when your blood pressure is too low. So you must salt your food like a maniac. If you end up getting this dizziness, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later too, we can maybe skip it since we're talking about it now, is you need to salt your food. So if you don't end up salting, I literally will just take a chug of water. I'll just put like a teaspoon of salt in my mouth. So I'm getting like a saline mixture type of thing, or you can just drink a salty drink or something, but it will very quickly rebalance you, and then you will start getting that normalcy or that feeling of normalcy back. So remember, sodium or salt is a really important electrolyte that we need for our balance. It also works with potassium as well. So that is rule number 3. The 4th rule, and there really are only 4 main rules. The 4th one isn't really so much a rule, is just sort of a thing that comes along with the territory. It's intermittent fasting. I will do another episode strictly on the science behind intermittent fasting. I was kind of like, intermittent fasting. I'm an eat every 3-hour kind of gal when I was doing the pre-carnivore diet. And it was, I guess, working for me, whatever that means. Not really. But I was eating because I didn't ever feel satiated because I wasn't eating enough fat. So I just kind of got into this every 3-hour rule, because if I didn't, I would just be an effing monster. I would go hangry, and you do not want to see me hangry. And you probably won't anymore because I eat a lot of fat and I can sit on that for a while. So intermittent fasting, there's a couple of years ago, it became very, very, very popular, and there's so much science behind it. It is actually natural for us to not only be eating carnivore, but also to be intermittently fasting. So when we were, before we were really humans, we were just caveman, really, we ate just as this diet is. We ate lots of meat, really fatty meats, like they, kill elephants and lions and like all of the species of animals that are very meaty and athletic and or had lots of fat, because that was just natural. That's how we evolved. And then we eventually evolved into grains and all these different types of foods, which is actually when civilization started being introduced to disease. So it's when we started introducing these non-carnivore foods into our life is when humanity started developing these ailments. So when we were sort of these cave people, they would eat, they would kill their prey, and they eat all the fat, and they would be satiated for a long period of time because fat is very satiating. And then they wouldn't eat for quite some time. They would be obviously sleeping or hunting or just feeling satiated. So this is a normal thing. And what intermittent fasting really is going without any food for really at least 16 hours. This was a struggle for me in the beginning. And I don't stick to this rule too strictly. I do, 12 hours is, pretty easy. Sometimes I'll go 16. Sometimes I'll go longer than that. It really just depends on how active I've been, how many calories I've consumed. I allow myself a little bit more freedom in that, but I also trust my body, and I know that sometimes I'm going to be fasting and sometimes I won't. And I don't get too cray-cray about it. So don't get cray-cray either unless you want to be. It's up to you. Some people do these, like they'll eat from, let's say they'll eat all day and they'll stop at 8 p.m. and then they won't eat again until 8 p.m. the next day. And then they'll keep going until 8 p.m. Like they do like these cycles, like one on, one off type of thing. That's wild. I couldn't imagine not putting any food in my mouth for 24 hours. I hate that. I love food too much to do that to my body. 16 is hard enough for me some days. So a common way you can do it is eat at 2 p.m. and then eat at 8 p.m. So you've got like a 6-hour window to just eat whatever you want. Again, there's some flexibility in that should you want to do that, but the intermittent fasting really is a nice sort of extra important piece, they say, to the carnivore diet. But that, again, there's some flexibility in that. So a sample diet, to kind of put this together, is you can have for breakfast like 1 pound of ribeye steak with 3 eggs. You can have 3 ounces of like fried liver and 3 ounces of salmon. For me, I like to have maybe 4 or 5 strips of bacon, or I'll have 2 or 3 strips of bacon and like 2 eggs. And then I like ribs. I will have 4 huge ribs at nighttime, or I'll have a steak and a half with a whole bunch of butter cut into it, of course, salted. So I usually salt my meat first, so salt my steak and then put the butter on top of it. Or with the ribs have so much cartilage, so much fat already, I just salt them and I just go to town. Another thing I like to eat is just like a pound of ground bison. Sometimes I can't put all of the pound away, but most times I can. The pound is like those little bricks of bison you get at like the store. Like that's a pound. You look at it, you're like, that is not like pre-carnivore diet. I'm like, that is not a lot of food. I'm going to go through 2 pounds. Like, what are these guys talking about? A pound of beef? Dude, that's nothing. I'm like, how is it that I look like this and they look like that? We're eating the same amount. Well, there's a lot of fat in it. And especially if you add the fat to it and the salt and you eat it slowly, not like woofing it down where you end up feeling super sick from just like an exploding stomach. It's very filling. So a pound, I tried a pound like 2 days ago and I ate 3/4 of it. Maybe a little bit less, which I was shocked by. But your stomach does shrink too when you convert to the carnivore diet because you don't feel hungry. So your stomach naturally shrinks. And so you're almost always, I don't want to say in a calorie deficit, but you kind of are, just because there's only so much food that you can fit in this teeny little stomach that shrinks, that's also nicely purified and not toxic anymore. And you're satiated, and there's no like cravings making you like binge eat on sugar and all those empty calories either. So those are things that I like. And like I told you, my little beef jerky snacks and my sausage links are like fave. People might not like that because technically you don't want to have the toxins, and we're going to talk about toxins. But again, I like to afford myself a little bit of leeway because I like my sanity. And for me, I need that for my sanity. People don't want me too crazy. I mean, I like me when I'm crazy, but other people may not. So I'm having a little bit of...
I like you crazy.
Thank you, Lana. She says she likes me crazy. I love you.
I love you.
Thank you. All right. So, okay, here are some things to consider about the carnivore diet. Now, there has been some research that a lot of meat, consuming a lot of meat, has a lot of phosphorus in it. Phosphorus isn't one of those main pieces that we need to be too concerned about. There was a UCLA study that did sort of like this systematic review that looked at the literature on phosphorus, and there really doesn't seem to be any major, or I shouldn't say major, there were no significant of any sort harmful effects of phosphorus at this time. They need to do more research, of course, because we haven't really been studying carnivore. Meat-based diets have been so taboo, even though that is not what the literature says, for so long. So there hasn't been funding for meat-based diets. There are more independent people, clinicians, organizations that are doing this study because there's people want this, and there's funding from other sources now available, which is really great because we want to balance out the literature, and we really want to know what's real, not just what is funded based off of certain people that might have their own biases or their own interests, or just aren't thinking that maybe other studies are important or necessary. So the way to combat that, so there are people that do like these adaptation or carnivore adjusted. Carnivore adjusted. I feel like that's a diagnosis. Doesn't that sound like a diagnosis? I'm carnivore adjusted. Oh, that's funny. It's a good one. And I'm going to sit on that. There's got to be some meme with that. But so the carnivore adjusted diets, you can do like asparagus or strawberries, kiwis, avocados that can help balance out the phosphorus. There's also some concern by the carnivore adjusted individuals who worry about the effects of ketosis, or they don't want to be in a constant state of ketosis. Their argument for that is sometimes your thyroid hormone T3 can get reduced over time, and that regulates your metabolism essentially, and not having carbs can actually slow your metabolism, which is why your thyroid will slow, so your metabolism slows. And because it's wanting to store the fats, it's using fat as fuel. So it's wanting to keep it down. It's like, okay, we're not getting any carbs, so we need to calm down, regulate the metabolism, because all we have is fat. We need to store fat for the next time that there might be a famine, right? So even though your body released some of that brown fat that, at the beginning, when you start eating more fat, there comes a point when if you really get down to a certain sort of metabolic rate, your body's, or a certain amount of weight and length of time, your body just kind of starts thinking there might be some starvation that's going on because you're not getting this constant stream. So the thyroid can downregulate. So just be aware of that. That can happen. Right. So I'm just looking at my notes here, the hyperglycemia that can happen. So sometimes the body responds in this like famine state by over secreting. You kind of get into this insulin resistance, this increased insulin resistance through a famine state. So what can end up happening is you end up getting like this increase in glyconeogenesis, which is the breakdown of proteins into sugars. And it can just really screw everything up in your system and cause a sort of overproduction of sugar. so you basically end up having like these high blood sugar spikes when you're at a baseline, like in the morning time. Now, there are more and more studies that are coming out and more MDs that are on this carnivore diet that are experimenting within their own groups and their own client bases, that the increase in the sugar is not statistically significant. So it's not going to cause any harm to you. Even if you go from like a 72 as your resting blood sugar to like an 80, it doesn't affect your A1C enough for it to be causing any harm. The full data and the long-term effects, aren't in yet, but we're seeing that even if you increase a little bit, you're still under that normal threshold and it's okay. But there are some people that just don't want to get into that state where their blood sugars are up at all just because it's a preference and they may not feel that there's enough research yet to make them feel safe and comfortable. So one of the ways that you can have a carnivore adjusted diet to counteract these is to have just a little bit of low toxin fruits or vegetables like potatoes. Sweet potatoes are good. You can also have blackberries and blueberries. They're very low in oxalates, so they have a lot of antioxidants and sugar. You just have to remember that when you introduce sugar into your body, it can have more of an inflammatory effect. There are also some other toxins in them, so your ability to regenerate might be a little bit compromised. You might have more inflammation. So it's at your discretion. Your risk stratification process is your own. You decide what you want to do in that situation. So, all right, we are banging right through, Lana. All right, so some of the general questions I have people asking me are, can I have alcohol?
Yeah.
Alcohol, it's fermented from plants, and plants are not carnivore. So the answer would technically be no. I mean, it does disrupt the fat metabolism, so it's obviously addictive. There's also some other, things that can come along with alcohol. The way you behave may not be great. It depends how intense you want to and moral and have, how much you want to get involved. Okay, that's an individual discussion and decision. But I mean, it has sugar in it, so you want to have it sparingly. I mean, really, it's just because of the sugar. For me, it's the sugar. Yes, there's all the social and other effects that it can have, but in terms of just the body effects and the microbiome and mental clarity and all of that stuff, I generally say leave it to a treat day if you want to have a treat day. I allow myself a treat day every 7 to 10 days. Sometimes I go a little bit longer. It just all depends. I used to do like hardcore carb days, but I didn't have the desire to be going hardcore on pretzels and bread and stuff. Now I'm just like, I'll have a little bit. I'll do like most of my day carnivore, and then I'll have like one meal and like some chocolate if it entices me, and maybe a drink if I want. But it's really, once you really adapt and you convert, you get into this, you feel so good. You don't really feel the craving for these other things. But I know alcohol is very social. People do it at gatherings. You just can't be too excessive with it just because the sugar is going to act with the fat and then your heart attack waiting to happen. That's not the point of this. So just be aware. Okay, the other questions I get too are, can I have coffee? Well, it's great. Like I said before, I allow myself to have coffee because I love the coffee flavor. It makes me feel all warm and fuzzy that I can cuddle up with a little cup of coffee and like, oh, it's so tasty. Or if it's iced, I really like my iced Americano with sugar-free vanilla. Yes, I know, sugar-free, the toxins, I get it. I allow myself some toxin sometimes. When I make it at home, I'll put a little bit of either butter, or sometimes I will put this beef tallow cocoa flavored powder in it that is so high fat. It's really amazing. It tastes like a mocha. Like, it is unreal. If any of you guys want to know which that is, message me. I will let you know. But holy cow, it is like heaven, and there's no carbohydrates in it. It's insane. So I'll do that. I will also allow myself sometimes coconut oil actually in my coffee. Coconut oil helps with reflux. Once you're on the carnivore, like my reflux totally went away, but it helps with reflux in the beginning phase. You can just actually take a tablespoon of it. But if you put in your coffee, it will help calm that acid at the beginning. And coconut oil is super low in oxalates in most of the databases that I've seen. Some people are like really out there and they label it something else. But from my understanding from the consistencies is coconut oil is low. There might be some other toxins in it, but every now and then I just like to have the coconut flavor. So that's what I'll add there. In terms of spices, salt is really it, guys and gals. There are, even pepper is not great. Where do spices come from? Plants. They don't come from animals. So technically you need to stay away from them because they have all of those toxins in there that counteract what you're trying to achieve with your healing and regeneration at nighttime. So sorry if you're a spice fiend. Can I drink the milk? Yes, we talked about that. You can have milk. You can have whole milk, again, without the carbs. You can have half and half in your milk. You can drink half and half if you want to fly that way. A good way to do it also, again, is like just have it in your coffee. Can I eat processed meat? So we talked a little bit about processed meat. You really want to avoid it as much as possible, again, because of the chemicals and the preservatives and those types of things. This carnivore diet is, the philosophy behind it isn't just to eat meat because we want to eat meat and we want to be meatheads and we want to have high testosterone and we want to be able to pump the iron. It's really about what's natural for our bodies and what's clean and pure. So that's the underlying notion of this. So when we talk about don't have artificial sweeteners, yes, they also disrupt the microbiome, which is not natural, right? We don't want toxins. Toxins are not natural. We don't want irritants like coffee because it's not natural. We don't want nitrates because it's not natural. It doesn't promote a homeostatic environment in our body. So processed meats have preservatives and things in it that disrupt our body in a not natural way. It introduces chemicals. So this carnivore diet is also seen as like a purist approach, if you will, because it really is, the animals we want as clean of meat as possible, the free range or the, as wild as possible, because we want them to be grazing on the beautiful, wonderful, nutrient-rich plant food that we won't be eating, but we'll be getting the nutrients from that animal, from the greens from the animal. So think of it as it's not just about the meat and why the meat. This is really the other big part of the why. It's about natural, it's about chelating, it's about allowing the body to heal and stay vital for as long as possible. And that in this day and age is a long time. There are a lot of people that are living a long, long time and looking very, very young and feeling and having bodies that are very young. And that's what I wanted to align with. And that's what a lot of people who are on the carnivore diet want to align with. They don't want to just live long. They want to live long with vitality and look and feel young. So it's a really purist approach. All right, so how long is the adaptation phase? The adaptation phase can happen anywhere from a couple weeks to about 30 days. So that's why when I suggest someone to start on their carnivore approach, that they really want to commit to 30 days. 30 days. Go all in. And this is the other thing I tell people when they're like, nah, but I don't know, it's a big commitment. See it as an experiment, okay? Journal it, have fun with it. Know that it's just something you're going to do for 30 days, all right? If you don't like it, if the experiment was a horrible mistake, not enough damage, if you want to see it as that, it won't. You'll be actually surprised at the things that your body does in a positive way to benefit you. But if for some reason you say, you know what, I don't like this, what you did gain out of it is a resetting of your microbiome. You got rid of all of the yeast, all of the bugs, all of the things, and you are in a place where you get to say, okay, I'm just going to go back to the way I ate before because I want to. but you gain something from this. You will absolutely gain something from this. And you'll also learn how your body responds. There's a lot of knowledge to be gained. So I'm always pro experimentation, so long as you prepare yourself, which is why I did this podcast. So you have the tools and the strategies and a little bit of the information and a knowledge base to get yourself ready to embark on this experiment. And then after 30 days, assess. Really journal down, list what it is that you felt before, and jot down the things that, oh my God, I don't have that anymore. I realized this happened and that happened. And there's a lot of things that will start coming up. So the other part to starting this approach is make sure you document. So if you want to get some baseline labs, if you haven't had them done already, maybe they're 3 months old or whatever, but get some baseline lab tests. So your basic stuff, your cholesterol, your comprehensive metabolic panel. So your cholesterol, your sugars, your enzymes, liver enzymes, A1C if you want to, if you're diabetic, your kidney function, hormone levels if you want to as well. That's really important. Just the general, just go to your prescriber and just say, I want some basic labs because I'm going to be changing my diet a little bit. And then you can start on it and do your labs, if you want to, if you continue on at 3 to 6 months after you've started it as well, to just sort of cross compare and you have some really hard data. So the journal, some baseline labs, I recommend. Definitely, you need to have your shopping list. Get rid of all of the plant-based crap in your fridge like now. You don't want to be tantalized or tempted, because you will be in the first 3 days. As all of those bugs in your belly die and you feel horrible, you are going to want to grab a carbohydrate. You just will. So do not have them accessible anywhere. I'm telling you. Please do not tempt yourself. The first 3 days are the worst of any addiction, and sugar and carbs are truly an addiction. Hi, my name is Leslie. I am a recovering sugar addict. It's real. It really is real. All right. The other things you want to make sure you get to, I'm digressing a little from the Q&A, but I want you guys to have a shopping list ready. The other thing is a really high quality salt. So there is a particular type of salt. If you research it, I don't want to name any of the names in this episode, but there's a really popular salt that's out there. Not all salt is created equally. They have a lot of hidden chemicals and crap in them. So make sure you pick a high quality salt and a high quality butter. I really like a particular butter too. Most of them are not made here. They're overseas. Most of which you can get in a regular store here, but a good high quality butter. Find one that you like and work with it. If you don't want to do the butter because you're dairy sensitive, beef tallow, it is. I cook with it sometimes. It's a little bit of an acquired taste, but it works too. It's a nice alternative. Okay, so we are going to talk. This is the last segment that I have for this. How are we doing on time, Lana?
Yeah, I'm 43. You're okay.
Nice. Okay. So there's a few things that happen in the adaptation phase, but also just in general on the carnivore diet after you adapt that you have to be aware of. Must know these sort of common side effects that you need to watch for, why they happen, and how to fix them. So the first one is diarrhea. So when you cut out carbs, basically what you're doing is you're cutting off the fuel supply to all the yeast and the bacteria and all the other things that are in your belly. And we know we have this. We've actually, the plant-based diets talk about wanting to work with the microbiome and the fermentation process that these bacteria do, because it helps balance the gut-brain barrier, or the gut-brain axis, one of the pathways. However, it's actually overfueling. Sugar is overfueling. Carbs are overfueling. You don't actually need to have as much fermentation as a lot of these plant-based approaches discuss, even the science, that you don't need it. There's many other pathways that your body can use that are not actually going to have the harmful effects that using that pathway in excess have created. So you end up getting all these toxins and inflammation and all the metabolic byproducts of the bacteria overgrowth that are being released, and it can just cause a lot of release, you know what I mean? So you get some diarrhea. Also, when you increase your fat, your bile enzymes, the acids have to adjust. and you end up getting like this imbalance right away because your body just isn't used to breaking down fat. So at the beginning, you can sometimes have a little bit of fat just kind of flowing out of you because you don't have enough bile acids to break it down. But there are bile acids that you can actually take. There's ox bile supplements that you can take to help supplement you at the very beginning to help break it down. You can also obviously eliminate your dairy because dairy can sometimes cause diarrhea. You want to make sure you're keeping hydrated with the salty water because sometimes, again, there's an electrolyte imbalance and you want to definitely be rehydrating yourself. That will go away as your body does adapt. So just keep that in mind that you just want to be drinking lots of fluids again to hydrate and clear out the toxins faster. And replacing and rehydrating after because of the diarrhea, and then also the bile acids from the ox bile acids supplements. The reverse can also happen. So you can actually get constipation, although this isn't necessarily constipation. I noticed in the first 3 days as everything was dying off, I was constipated because there's just, my microbiome was so discombobulated. And then I had like a massive release and all this crazy gross stuff came out of my body. But what ends up happening in this adaptation and also post-adaptation, your bowel movements are much, much smaller just because you don't have the fiber. You don't need fiber. Talked about that on my prior episode. I'll talk about it in another one exclusively about literature to support this. But you really just end up getting smaller amounts of stool, but your inflammation and the bloating is like non-existent. So just know that it might not actually be constipation. You might not actually be not able to poop. It's just that your poop is a lot smaller because you don't have all of the unnecessary stuff in there anymore. So make sure you know. If you do actually somehow end up getting constipated, maybe you had dairy or eating something that you're not that you're too sensitive to, or you don't maybe have a particular protein to break down one of the types of meats that you're eating, which does exist too genetically, you can obviously eat more fat. Eating more fat will cause the bowels to be slippery and you will just let it rip. It'll be like a slippery slide. Whee! Everything will just come right out nice and gently, and sometimes not. Sometimes I know people have had explosive fat poops. So bit by bit, you can just increase your fat. Yes, we're talking about poop. Slippery slide, bowels. Whee! All right, you can also take supplements with magnesium citrate in them. Magnesium is a natural laxative. Wow, I took a new magnesium supplement because I just wanted to. Because I'm not eating a ton of organ meats and I can't eat the dairy, I feel like it's important for me to get some supplementation just to make sure I'm nutriently balanced. And so I took this mineral complex and holy shit, literally. I was like gurgly and I'm like, what is happening? What did I eat? And I didn't realize it was the magnesium. And then, yeah, so magnesium works. Magnesium works. So I'll help you with this constipation. Drinking bone broth can actually help. There's a lot of electrolytes in it and there's amino acids and it can really help sort of just loosen everything up if you need to. I don't really recommend digestive enzymes, but you can be constipated by just not having that, but usually we see it on the other side. Okay, nausea. Nausea, again, can happen from the change in the microbiome when you have all of these toxins being stirred up and wanting to be eliminated. You know, here you can use, again, enzymes to help break down the food. You have to keep very, very hydrated. Sometimes you get this fat-induced nausea because your body just does not know how to digest fat. Like, we are so fat averse in our society. I mean, I've said this before, when I was 5-6 years old, I would eat butter under the table. I'd just finger butter into my mouth. My mom, like, bless her heart, it's so funny. She butter shamed me. Get out from under the table. That's so unhealthy for you. You know, she didn't know any better. But I did, obviously. Now I sometimes have just eaten butter. In my adaptation phase, I just ate butter for breakfast because it was just, my body craved it so much. But so you go through like this nausea from just the amount of beef. I noticed it was exactly day 14 when I remember eating this huge ass beef rib. It was like massive at one of the local places here. And I'm like, oh my God, I want it so bad, but I know I'll get nauseated. But it wasn't so much where I felt like puking. It was just like, oh, there's just so much. And I ate it. And it was the first time I did not have the nausea on the fat. So my body took a little bit of time to fully be able to convert over and start building the enzymes to break it down. But it happened and it was brilliant. So that phase is short-lived during the adaptation, but no, it happens. But if you get to the point where you're so nauseated that you feel like you're going to throw up, that you need to like probably add a little bit more salt onto your food, because the salt actually also is a mechanical, it mechanically breaks down the meat too. So it helps just sort of balance all of that out. So again, salt is like savior. And which is, I know, so weird because everyone says, all the medical professionals say, don't eat fat, don't eat salt. But here we are doing it because, again, fat with sugar is a nightmare. You will die. Fat and salt without sugar and insulin is like bliss. At least that's what the research is starting to suggest. Where are we at? Okay. Oh, the other really cool thing that I found is when you get that nausea, you're having a lot of difficulty in that beginning phase, sparkling water is amazing. There's so many different brands out there that don't have any sugar in them. And I just drink them all the time. They're so fun and bubbly, and it helps digest the food, and it allows the nausea to be much easier. So that was a nice little trick that I found in the very beginning too. And now I just kind of do it because it's nice and fun. And there's organic brands of these sparkling water that's unbelievable. The flavor is so much better. So definitely indulge in that. That's kind of like a sweet little treat. Also, for those of you who need a little indulgence at the end of the night, you're used to having like a little chocolate or a piece of sugar or whatever, you can definitely go for cheese. Cheese and like some deli meats. Again, be careful of the nitrates and stuff in it, but that's a really nice nighttime snack if you need something. Sugar cravings. Again, it's the microbiome. It's all those bugs telling you, feed me, feed me, feed me. You basically suffocate them out when you don't have any sugar. So you just want to eat more fat. They'll die off. I don't want to say quicker, but they'll die off when you're just basically suffocating them. But the whole reason why your body does not feel satiated on a carb diet is because you're not getting enough fat. I will tell you, I guarantee you, when you start eating an enormous amount of fat, 80% of your calories from fat, eventually you will not carb crave at all. Like you will look at a carb and you will just go, oh yeah, that looks good. But that urge, that craving will not exist. I've seen it repeatedly with people who have done this. It happened with me. It's actually the main reason why I wanted to do this was I just didn't want to fight my body anymore. I wanted to trust my body's appetite. I hated that I would consume so many vegetables and fruit and modest starchy carbs and a little bit of meat, clean meat, and I would be still so ravenous, not satiated, but full. And the fat is absolutely the key to it. You can also use stress reducing, like meditation and relaxation mindfulness actually can help too with sugar cravings as well. There is some research to back that. All right, leg cramps is basically the lack of sodium, potassium, or magnesium. Those are easy. Electrolytes, salt water, or you can take some minerals for that. You can also get your magnesium from the fishes that I had listed earlier. Bad breath is another one. Oh my goodness, the keto breath. It's like, some people say it's sweet. Some people say it smells like nail polish. It's like acetone. So when your body breaks down, you get the ketones. That ketone breath is really, it's like, I guess nail polish. It's what people say. Drink a lot of water to help flush it off. Definitely have good oral hygiene. You definitely need to anyways. I mean, gum disease has so many links to other types of physical systemic problems. Just have good oral hygiene, and that does get better after you adapt. So the first period of time it's like super bad, and then it does improve over time where it's more like a sweetness than anything else. The heart palpitations is the same thing. It's low sodium and fluid. So when you don't have blood volume, your heart pounds harder, And again, that's just, you need to get that water being resorbed, and you're going to do that very simply through salt. So in this case, if you don't want to drink salt water, take a little sip and just throw like some salt in your mouth, they say to just increase your salt intake by about 2 tablespoons, and then you can back down to 1 tablespoon a day. That's the added salt above what you're doing now. So that is sort of a rough estimate of, how the fluid balance will work in your body. Just make sure you're drinking a lot of fluid with it too, so that you can pull in that fluid into your blood volume to make the palpitations go away. So that is it, my friends. That was jam-packed, full of lots of information. I didn't get into as much of the hardcore research this time. There was no necessity for it today, but I will definitely get on your questions and inquiries for the next time, and we'll dive into a little bit more of the research. Thank you so much, listeners. I love you all. Happy meat eating. Until next time.